Now, there's been lots of talk about people flouting the lockdown rules in Australia and the States, but it turns out we don't have to look that far to find rule breakers. Those surfers in Dunedin, they're not alone.
Now, this came from A. Byrne Francis. We're not sure who she is.
No, it's not me.
Oh, no,
it was a source of mine.
A source of Anna Burns Francis. A source of Anna's. This is Herne Bay, I believe, which is near central Auckland.
Oh, you weren't meant to name the beach. It was meant to be secret.
Oh, it was secret beach somewhere in central Auckland. Rhymes with Herne Bay. It is Herne Bay. And look, way too many people. I know it's a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day yesterday, but just too many. It's not a chance to go to the beach. It's not a chance to swim. It's not a chance to go surfing, even if it's a nice day. This is only going to work, New Zealand, if we stay at home.
Yeah, the whole point is you're meant to stay at home. You're not meant to go out to the beach just because it's a nice day, because there's all sorts of other things that you touch, or that if there's a kid who kicks a ball and comes over towards you and gets in your space, or you're all touching hand railings going down to the beach.
Yeah. Do you want to be in lockdown for another 2 months, or should we just do 4 weeks?
Yeah.
That was my growly voice.
At the end of the day, there's nothing cool about being a rebel at this point in time. So if you don't want to listen to us, well, we'll get Susie Wiles to call you, as we do.
You don't want that.
At 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, March the 25th, Alert Level 4 was activated and New Zealand went into an extreme and unprecedented nationwide lockdown. Almost 12 hours earlier, a state of emergency was declared, giving police powers to detain and arrest anyone failing to comply with the requirements to stay at home. As retailers prepared to shut their doors, many Kiwis took advantage of the remaining hours on Alert Level 3 to stock up on goods and entertainment to get them through. Shelves of children's arts, crafts and activities at St Luke's Kmart had been cleared out by parents desperate to entertain confined children throughout the lockdown. But today's message from Ardern was clear.
Stay at home. It will break the chain of transmission and it will save lives. Breaking the rules could kill someone close to you. This plan is our best shot at success. We won't get everything right every time, and we will make changes if we have to. But now is not the time to be relaxed or flexible. We do need tough rules to win the battle ahead. I know how hard this will be, especially for New Zealanders who face the first day of lockdown unemployed and with an uncertain future.
At 6:30 p.m, an emergency alert via text message was sent out reminding people that, quote, "Where you stay tonight is where you must stay from now on." And Auckland's usually busy roads, normally bumper to bumper at rush hour, were eerily quiet as New Zealand's largest city prepared to shut down for the next month. As dawn broke on March 26, Kiwis right around the country woke to similar scenes, albeit through their phone and computer screens. Although some teething problems were to be expected, day one of the nationwide lockdown had seen very few.
The reports I have had to date is that everything, broadly, is running as smoothly as could be expected at this time. Here we are on Thursday, with our streets essentially empty. That is a remarkable feat, and I want to thank the nation for that.
In general, it appeared New Zealanders were setting into their new normal relatively well. Then, 4 days into the nationwide lockdown on Sunday, March 29, the Prime Minister and the Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, fronted a thinned-out media contingent in Wellington with this.
Sadly, New Zealand has had its first death linked to Covid-19 on the West Coast early this morning. The death was in a woman in her 70s who had initially been admitted for what was thought to be influenza, complicated by an underlying chronic health condition. This latest sad news reinforces our move to Alert Level 4 and the measures we are all taking to prevent spread, break the chain of transmission and prevent deaths.
Even in light of the sobering announcement, it seemed some had forgotten or were confused by what lockdown meant and how strict the stay-at-home message really was. Police were called to a backpackers in Queenstown to find a 60-person bubble, clearly taking liberties with what the term bubble means.
I've heard today that some people were playing touch rugby and frisbee in parks. That's just stupid. People need to stop doing that sort of thing.
Earlier that day, a website set up by police for the public to report lockdown breaches had crashed within an hour of going live. It has now more than 10,000 reports of rule flouting. On April 1st, the government loosened the testing criteria so that people with coronavirus symptoms but no travel or contact history could be tested. It was a call many scientists had been rallying for weeks, stating more testing was the only way to show the true extent of community transmission.
Today, that group have recommended broadening the case definition for testing. This will widen testing to include people with COVID-19 symptoms, but not necessarily a history of travel or exposure to another case to be tested. I do expect the number of people tested in New Zealand to grow, and it needs to grow.
At the end of week 1 in lockdown, there are a total of 797 cases of COVID-19 in New Zealand. Out of these, 13 are in hospital and 2 are in ICU. 92 people have fully recovered, and sadly, we have had 1 death. There are now 935,000 cases globally, with more than 47,000 deaths recorded. These uncharted waters will be causing unease and anxiety for many, but remember, we are all in this together.
Today there are 76 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 13 new probable cases. There are no additional deaths to report in New Zealand. There are now 92 reported cases that we can confirm have recovered from COVID-19. So the combined total of confirmed and probable cases in New Zealand is now 797. That's an increase of 89 since yesterday. Today, there are 13 people in hospital with COVID-19, including 2 in ICU. All patients are stable. There are more details on our website about just which hospitals those people are in. For those cases that we have information on, we are still seeing a strong link to overseas travel, that is 51% of cases, as well as links to confirmed cases within New Zealand, 31%. And at the moment, we're only categorising 1% as community transmission. But I do want to point out that a further 17% of cases are still being investigated, and we fully expect that many of those will transpire to be community transmission. Community transmission is essentially a categorisation by exclusion, so we have to exclude any tie to international travel or to an existing probable or confirmed case. So once again, 17% of cases are still being investigated, and many of those we expect will transpire to be community transmission. There is updated information on our website around the current clusters in New Zealand. What I can say is just at a high level, there are now 6 clusters of 10 or more people. There were 7 yesterday. But one of those is now less than 10, so we have taken that off. And further information, updated information about the number of cases in each cluster is on our website. In terms of laboratory testing, our test capacity continues to grow significantly. Yesterday, our labs across the country processed 2,563 tests. Bringing our total number of tests completed to date in New Zealand to just over 26,000. We now have the 8 labs around the country processing tests, and by next week that will be 10. Our total volume that we can process each day is now over 4,000 tests, and in the last 7 days the average has been 1,835 per day. We know that in terms of both capacity and increasingly in terms of testing, we benchmark well with other countries, particularly in terms of where we are at in the stage of the outbreak in New Zealand. And I just want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that has gone on amongst our labs over the last few weeks to increase our capacity amongst the staff there and the work they've been doing. And we have had for several weeks a national network of labs that convenes every day by teleconference. And we have, because we have that number of labs with a number of different platforms on which they do the testing, we're not reliant on a single platform, so we have, in a sense, our eggs in more than one basket. And likewise, it means that we can use that testing capacity around the country where and when it is needed, so we can move test volumes to another lab if needs be. So we're starting to analyse the information about where COVID-19 is in New Zealand, and we know that we've had the most number of cases in the following 4 district health boards: Southern DHB, and that's particularly around the Queenstown area, Waikato, Auckland and Waitemata. And one of the things we're now wanting to do is to look at the details of where those lab tests have been undertaken so that we can build a picture of the rate of testing in each region. And that will help inform our decision making about moving between alert levels. Just moving on to personal protective equipment. There's been a lot of interest in that, and in particular, I think the distribution of masks out to all our frontline workers, whether inside hospitals or out in our community providers. As I've said in the past, we have plenty of that equipment available across New Zealand, and more is on the way. And we have that very clear clinical advice about the situations where practitioners should be using PPE. So over the last 7 days, we've distributed 1.8 million masks around to DHBs and more widely in the sector. I can also confirm that on Tuesday night, we confirmed an order of 41 million additional face masks that will start to arrive from next Monday and continue to be delivered over the next 6 weeks. And the DHBs are leading the distribution of face masks and other PPE to the range of providers in their region. So just another couple of other stats about PPE that's on order. At the moment, we've got 23 million pairs of gloves in the country. We've got over 1 million more on order, so the stock keeps coming. We've got 850,000 glasses, safety glasses or equivalent, and 640,000 face shields on order as well. So in addition to our good stock on hand, we are making sure that those supply lines are good so that we continue to have an uninterrupted supply. Just another word on health sector preparedness. Our hospital-based staff have been working hard over the last couple of weeks to free up capacity, and we know that our hospital occupation rates are around 50% across the country. It does vary somewhat, but that's much lower than they usually are. And our ICUs in particular have been doing a huge amount of work to get prepared over this last week to be able to look after people who might need ventilation or intensive care, not just in their current settings, but in other parts of the hospital. And I think you heard a bit about this yesterday, but I just wanted to pass on a text that I had from one of our district health board's CEOs a day or two ago. He said, "Just spent an hour up in our ICU, incredible clinical leadership and planning from our senior medical officers and nurses, so humbling." And so our ICU staff are all geared up. They've got their plans in place to be able to deal with and treat additional people if that is required. As I said earlier on, at the moment, we have just 2 people in intensive care around the country. And finally, just an update on flu vaccination. We know that we've got nearly 900,000 vaccines that have been sent to providers this year, and that is the first, I guess, instalment of a total number of vaccines that will be 400,000 more than last year. So we have brought forward the vaccination of people most at risk, and that is happening apace around the country, as well as vaccinating our frontline health workforce. There is still plenty of vaccine out in the sector, but I'm aware that there is a distribution in some areas where redistribution needs to happen, and that is happening. For example, I know that the New Zealand Defence Force released 500 doses in whangarei to go to local Māori health providers to immunise people who are over 65 or have existing health conditions. And the Occupational Health Service in Wellington released a similar number to the DHB in Wellington to help vaccinate our frontline staff. So we have plenty of vaccine. Another 100,000 doses are just going through the QA process. They arrived in the last day or 2, and we have another 200,000 doses arriving on shore over the weekend, and they'll be available for distribution next week. And we've got this sector-wide effort to redistribute locally so that practices and others can vaccinate those high-risk people and people over 65. I'll leave it there, and I'll hand over to Mike Bush.
Kia ora, Ash, kia ora koutou. Several things I'd like to cover off today. First is to again acknowledge the wonderful New Zealanders that are strictly complying with the conditions that are in front of us. They all know that to stay home will save lives. But I'm also aware of some isolated incidents where people are not necessarily complying, and I refer, for example, to the commentary out of Kaitaia this morning by Dr. Lance O'Sullivan, suggesting that more needs to be done. I can say that we have deployed more of our police staff up into that area to again engage, educate and encourage people to do the right thing, as the majority are doing. And of course, if that doesn't work, there will be an enforcement follow-up. I'm also aware of the issues around getting real clarity about what you can do and what you can't do. And I'd like to ensure that people do go to that COVID website. We're building it every day. So the scenario that might be in front of you, the queries and concerns you might have should be addressed through that website. Next thing I'd like to talk about is in terms of what's happening inside police demand. We've had a significant drop-off, as you would expect, in quite a few areas. We haven't had the significant increase in family violence, family harm through reports, but I am aware from those who are working on the ground in this, particularly NGOs, particularly in areas like counties Manukau and others, that there has been an increase in family harm, family violence. I will repeat that it's an absolute priority for us to attend and respond to these incidents. So if that's occurring in your place, please call us. If you're responsible for that kind of thing, stop and respect others. Be kind, be compassionate. Happy to talk about any more of that also. In terms of our own staff, I've been asked a number of times, do we have the personal protection equipment required? Pleased to say that we've issued recently 9,000 individual kits to our frontline staff, and they contain goggles, they contain gloves, they contain masks, cleaning agents, so that our staff have what they need. That doesn't mean we're stopping there. We're continuing to build stocks for our people. And if they are going into homes where there is an existing bubble where they're invited in, they will wear that equipment. I want to finish by saying, some of you may know this is my last day as Commissioner of the New Zealand Police. I'm extremely proud of the people, the 14,000 people inside the New Zealand Police, but also our emergency services partners and everyone in hospitals, private and public, that are on the front line of this response to COVID-19, what they do, the professional way they do it, the courageous way they do it, to keep everyone safe. So can I, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of them for their commitment to their country and to the people of New Zealand. For clarity, I am staying on in my role as part of the all-of-government response to COVID-19, in a role of strategic leadership of the operational response.
I have to say I'm extraordinarily disappointed and frankly gutted to see what has been a part of New Zealand history close its doors fairly abruptly today. What I want to make really clear though is that the government actively sought to assist Bauer through this period of time. Minister Chris Whāwhoi spoke to them and asked if they could take up the wage subsidy. They refused. In my view, from what I know of this situation, this appears to have been a decision that has been made that is at the same time as COVID-19, but not because of it. Well, ultimately, the issues around advertising revenue and so on are a long-term issue that has been exacerbated by revenue going in, for instance, to online media, social media and so on. The wage subsidy could and should have made a difference to those staff, to those writers, to those journalists, and we were very keen that Bauer take it up. Many other businesses have done the same. They've seen it as an opportunity to keep their staff on. We would have liked to have seen Bauer do that too. Keep their doors open, keep operating, keep an online offering, and move through the other side of COVID-19 once we're all able to.
This is COVID-19 Pacific Update for Thursday, the 2nd of April. There are now 147 positive cases in 7 countries and 4 deaths. Guam's cases continue to grow. The count now at 77, 5 of them health workers. There's been 3 deaths there. Neighbouring Northern Marianas is also seeing more tests positive, now at 6, including 1 death. French Polynesia has 37 and New Caledonia 16. Rapa Nui or Easter Island has 5 cases and Fiji remains steady, still at 5. Papua New Guinea has only had 1 test positive, a foreign mine worker who's been sent back to Australia for treatment. As Guam faces its own crisis on land, there's also one brewing in its port. A stricken Navy carrier, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, has 70 plus COVID-19 cases amongst its 4,000 crew. The captain has been begging for nearly all his crew to be removed, saying, "We are not at war, sailors do not need to die." Guam authorities have agreed to allow those who have tested positive to use their motels to quarantine. Now the Navy is trying to work out how to get them off. 10% of crew will stay on board to manage critical systems. There's bad news in the Northern Marianas. There are now 6 confirmed cases, including 1 death, community transmitted. The new cases include a 14-year-old as well as 2 over 60s. There are real fears the hospital, for a population of around 55,000, cannot handle an outbreak. A curfew has been imposed and all schools are closed until next year. Rapa Nui or Easter Island has also seen an increase with 5 people testing positive. It's believed all 5 live in the same household. The island has been on lockdown and residents are not allowed out for essentials unless it's between 5 a.m. and 2 p.m. The Cook Islands has announced wage subsidies will start from the week of April the 6th. Cash grants will be paid at the same time. Welfare payments will be paid out on April the 16th. Minister of Finance Mark Brown says a payment system of this magnitude has never been done before in the history of the Cook Islands. Tonga, which remains in lockdown, is scrambling to prepare for potential COVID-19 cases. It's short of medical equipment and protective gear. The government has refused to let an aircraft carrying medical supplies from China land, so the donated items will instead be shipped from Fiji. While Samoa's closed its schools, it's offering alternative ways of learning. A government digital channel will be used by the Ministry of Education to deliver programs to students. Radio station 2AP is doing the same thing. The schedules for both can be found on the MESC website and Facebook page. Our next COVID-19 update will be tomorrow, Friday, the 3rd of April. Stay safe.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump is mulling domestic travel restrictions as the US witnesses highest one-day rise in coronavirus death toll. With 884 casualties in a day, the death toll has now risen to 4,475. Donald Trump said that he's considering some domestic travel restrictions as the COVID-19 outbreak worsens. A 6-week-old baby died of coronavirus-related complications in the Connecticut state, which borders with virus hotspot of New York.
We're soon going to have more ventilators than we need. We're building thousands of ventilators right now. Now, it takes a period of time to build them. And again, nobody could have known a thing like this could happen. We're building thousands. We will fairly soon be at a point where we have far more than we can use, even after we stockpile for some future catastrophe, which we hope doesn't happen. We're going to be distributing them, the extras, around the world. We'll go to Italy, we'll go to France, we'll go to Spain, which is very hard hit.
Even as the US faces a shortage of medical supplies, Trump seemed hopeful that the country will produce an excess of ventilators. He said that the US will also distribute extra life supports to virus-hit nations of Italy and Spain.
Are you considering a temporary ban on all domestic flights?
I am looking at hotspots. I am looking where flights are going into hotspots. Some of those flights I didn't like from the beginning. But closing up every single flight on every single airline, that's a very, very, very rough decision. But we are thinking about hot spots where you go from spot to spot, both hot. And we'll let you know fairly soon.
Meanwhile, a plane carrying Russian military aid landed in the virus-hit state of New York. This came after a telephonic conversation between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. This is probably the first time that Washington has accepted aid from Moscow. Meanwhile, Governor Andrew Cuomo ordered the closure of all playgrounds in New York in an effort to bolster social distancing and limit the number of coronavirus-related deaths, which are approaching 2,000 in the state. It's day 9th of the lockdown in India. The cases are growing and fast. The world is shaken by the sheer magnitude of this outbreak. Let's have a quick look at these numbers. 180 countries and regions have the coronavirus now. The United States now, the worst affected country in the world, with over 200,000 cases, more than 5,000 deaths. Europe looks equally bad. More than 110,000 cases in Italy alone. Spain is reporting over 100,000 cases now. Germany is next with more than 77,000 cases. France has left Iran behind. It has more than 56,000 cases. India too is reporting a big spike in cases, close to 2,000 confirmed cases now. There are 1,834 confirmed cases. 143 people have been cured. 41 people have died. So the COVID-19 pandemic has begun to sweep through India's medical ranks, and anxiety is growing among the medical professionals already. There is panic among health workers over shortages of personal protective equipment. As per reports, many doctors and nurses of New Delhi Municipal Council have resigned owing to lack of proper safety gear. However, the authorities have denied these claims. On the other hand, the Jammu and Kashmir administration has issued a stern warning. It has said that it will take strict action against doctors and paramedics who are publicly criticizing the efforts of the administration to combat the pandemic of COVID-19. The situation is alarming. Many healthcare professionals across India are hunkering down in wait for what many believe will be a tsunami of coronavirus cases.
Right now, it is our great hope, a vaccine for coronavirus. And today, scientists at the CSIRO are a step closer to a breakthrough. They've taken us inside mission control, where 2 potential vaccines are being put to the test.
It looks like a scene from science fiction. Researchers in full body suits. They're attached to tubes like umbilical cords, supplying them with air. Each time they leave the lab via a secure airlock, they need to shower. The Animal Health Laboratory in Geelong is the only one in the Southern Hemisphere that's capable of carrying highly dangerous and exotic pathogens. They're working around the clock in the fight against COVID-19.
Normally it takes about a year to 2 to actually get to the point where we've got to.
Ferrets are being used to test 2 potential vaccines from the University of Oxford and a pharmaceutical company in the US. The first approach uses a different virus to introduce proteins from COVID-19 to trigger an immune response. The second uses part of the genetic code of the coronavirus, so the body is able to make viral proteins to also stimulate the immune system.
It is absolutely essential that these vaccines are effective and also that they are safe.
The CSIRO says results from these animal trials will be announced in June, and if human trials succeed, a vaccine could be available at the end of this year or early next year.
Those public health measures need to be held in place until we are actually safe with vaccines.
And if you're wondering whether your pet can spread the virus,
there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that companion animals play any role in the epidemiology.
Gabriella Rogers, 9 News.
There have been 2 new COVID-19 deaths, each on either side of the nation. We'll start with Lane Cathcart, who's in Brisbane. Lane, good morning to you. A patient in Toowoomba Hospital has died overnight.
Yes, sadly, Davina, an 85-year-old man died there in the early hours of this morning. He's the second to die in Toowoomba Hospital. There have now been 3 Queenslanders, or 3 who have died here in Queensland. A 4th died in Sydney after flying there last month. Overnight, there have been another 57 confirmed cases, taking the total to 835. 60 are in hospital. Of those, 9 in intensive care, 8 are now on ventilators. Davina?
They're not good numbers. OK, Lane, thank you. Let's go to Andrew Lund, who's in Melbourne, with more on Victoria's latest death. Andrew, the state's death toll there now stands at 5.
Yes, unfortunately, Davina, a woman in her 70s died yesterday. She'd been receiving treatment in hospital. That takes the state's death toll to 5. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Victoria has now surpassed 1,000. It stands at 1,036 with 68 new cases confirmed yesterday. The good news is that 422 people have recovered, but what's concerned authorities today is a rise in community transmissions. It's jumped from 39 up to 57 cases of community transmission, and the Chief Health Officer says that may continue. It may be some time before we see the results of the latest social distancing measures.
The stay-at-home directions and the measures that are now in place really won't be seen in terms of their effect for 10, 12 days. It's still one to watch. And it's also important to recognise that there will be more community transmission out there that hasn't yet been detected.
They're hopeful of detecting more community transmission, though, with the government announcing this morning that it will expand the testing criteria with fewer travellers returning from overseas. There's now more capacity within the system, so Victoria will now look to test police and more frontline workers, disability support staff, those type of people, and also patients who are in high-risk treatment areas such as oncology units to try to detect those cases of COVID-19 early and reduce the likelihood of community transmission. Davina?
Andrew Lund, live in Melbourne, thank you. Well, we've been told to stay at home unless it's essential, but it seems that message isn't getting through in Sydney's east. Many swimmers seen jumping police barricades at Coogee this morning. Airlie Walsh is live with more details on this. Airlie, what have police said?
Well, Davina, the New South Wales Police Commissioner is calling on the community to treat every situation, every activity from now on as if you have the virus. Now, he says if we do that, that will save lives. Davina, we have to accept that our way of life has changed. Down here at Coogee today in Sydney's eastern suburbs, it's clear that a lot of people have realised this. They are heeding the advice, but I have to say it's also clear that there are a lot of people who have not accepted this new way of life. There are people who are still not abiding by those rules. Now, there is a lot of confusion out there, and in some instances, some must say just plain ignorance. Channel 9 cameras this morning captured swimmers stepping over police tape, police barricades to go swimming at closed beaches. Now, we're not saying that you can't swim. Swimming is a great form of exercise, but you cannot do it at beaches that have been cordoned off and closed off to the public. Now, the message from the Police Commissioner is simple. You must stay at home unless you have a reasonable excuse for leaving. Shopping for food, travel to work or school, medical treatment or exercise. Davina, those are all reasonable excuses. Now, yesterday our cameras captured police speaking to 2 mothers who were sitting in their activewear down here at Coogee with their prams and holding their babies, one of whom was breastfeeding. This has created quite the stir on social media. Now, Mick Fuller has assured the community today that officers will be using discretion, Davina, when policing these powers. Let's hear from Mick Fuller.
I want people to be able to sit and breastfeed their babies, and in weeks, you know, hopefully we do get back to that. But you carve out one person and then everybody obviously wants to go back to the park, and then we lose our distancing, and, you know, we lose the whole effort to keep people at home and keep them isolated.
Now, Davina, I want to take you to the latest figures right the way across Australia, across the nation. 4,864 Australians have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and more than 256 Australians have been tested for the virus. In New South Wales, it is still the worst hit area with more than double any other state or territory, with more than 21 cases here. A New South Wales grandmother who was a passenger on the Ruby Princess cruise ship is the 21st Australian to die from the coronavirus. Davina.
And 2 more this morning in Victoria and in Queensland, taking the toll to 23. Ellie, thank you.
24 people have now died across Australia from COVID-19, but there are early signs the all-important curve could be flattening. Today, the Police Commissioner hit out at those still not following the new rules, reminding the public they'll be in place for at least 90 days.
Coogee Beach Park benches were in demand this morning, but unlike yesterday, they weren't on the radar of patrolling police.
You are now no longer allowed to even sit on these benches.
Wasn't aware of it.
I didn't know that. I thought you were allowed to sit down.
The moving on of a breastfeeding mother by an officer enforcing new social distancing laws has divided not just the public.
If one person's allowed to sit in the park, everyone's going to want to sit in the park. And I know it's not a great look.
The Police Commissioner and the Police Minister not necessarily on the same page.
I don't think that you can stop a woman from breastfeeding her baby under any circumstances.
The Police Commissioner says he will personally review all the fines handed out by his officers, including the $1,000 penalty dished out to a man washing car windscreens at Chester Hill. That didn't stop another cleaner today taking his place, and there wasn't a police officer in sight. The operator of a Newcastle massage parlour has been hit with a $5,000 fine for opening its doors. The rules and regulations are delivering mixed results. 116 new cases of COVID-19 is down on the previous 24 hours. There are 2,298 in total. More concerning, 43 people are in intensive care and 20 require ventilators. And the tally of schools shut down by the virus continues to rise. Wiley Park Girls, St Mary's Senior High and Kambala have either had a student or a teacher testing positive. At the airport, another 500 passengers flew into isolation today, with 7 families moving into apartments rather than a single hotel room.
They're fully self-contained with laundry and kitchen facilities. They'll give our guests the chance to stretch out.
They face 2 weeks of quarantine, while for the rest of us, the clamp down on the way we live will last much longer.
It is 90 days, and I certainly won't be seeking an extension.
Damien Ryan, 9 News.
Over the span of 2,000 years, we have been given a collection of 66 books written by 40 people in various cultures, time periods, and languages. Today we call this collection the Holy Bible. Upon investigation, we find that these 66 books combine to form a message to humanity from a being outside of space and time by writing history before it happens. The Bible predicted the advent of the New Age movement and the New World Order thousands of years ago. It also tells us of a man who will rule this world empire and what his true intentions will be. All of this has been in the works for thousands of years, and it all hinges on Satan's ability to deceive mankind. The Apostle Paul in the 1st century AD wrote several letters to early churches, which are now called the epistles. The far application of these letters are a clear warning for us today. It is a warning of impending deception that will influence the whole world. Paul warns us of this deception in Ephesians 5, where he states, "Let no one deceive you with empty words." Then in his first letter to the Corinthians, he again tells us, "Do not deceive yourselves. If any one of you thinks he is wise by the standards of this age, he should become a fool so that he may become wise." In a letter to the Romans, he describes those who willingly live in lies when he writes, "Their throats are open graves, their tongues practice deceit, the poison of vipers is on their lips. For such people are not serving our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. By smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people." In a letter to Timothy, Paul clearly describes the world we see today when he writes, "The Spirit clearly says that in later times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits in things taught by demons." In the second letter to the Thessalonians, Paul describes the New World Order and the Antichrist when he wrote, "Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. Don't you remember that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things, and now you know what is holding him back, so that he may be revealed at the proper time. For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who now holds it back will continue to do so till he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the splendor of his coming. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan, displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. They are perishing because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in wickedness. The Apostle John, while in prison on the island of Patmos, had a vision of the end times and the deceiving entities that will walk the earth, stating, "And the great dragon was cast out, the ancient serpent who is called Devil and Satan. He who deceives the whole habitable world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. He deceives my own people who dwell on the earth because of the signs he was granted to do in front of the beast, saying to those who dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast who had the sword wound and lived." Jesus Christ himself gave his discourse of the end times when he stated clear warnings of the signs of the end. "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nations will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of the birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Christ,' or 'There he is,' do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you ahead of time. Jesus Christ died for the sins of all mankind. That means he died for the New Agers, the Freemasons, those in the Illuminati, the world elite, the Luciferians, the Satanists, and even me and you. God himself, taking on humanity, has given mankind a free gift of salvation and of true spiritual freedom. Now we all have a choice. We can live in darkness, allowing evil to enter our lives and unwillingly support the work of Satan and his fallen angels. Or we can let Jesus into our hearts and be spiritually saved forever. There are no prerequisites, rituals, or tests for accepting this gift of salvation. All one needs to do is ask honestly for Jesus to come into their heart. Remember these truths. God loves you, God cares about you, God wants nothing more than to know you personally and save you. Sin separates people from each other and God. Jesus died for your sins and rose again. You can receive Jesus now and know God's love right at this very moment. I pray for you all and hope the truth will indeed set you free. Thanks for your time. I think in conclusion, I'd like to appeal to those people that have been researching this for any length of time, specifically long periods of time, maybe even years. To you, I don't think this is going to require a lot of convincing. I think that subconsciously you know that a lot of what was said here is true. I think that you have seen over the years a lot of conclusions about what the New World Order is and what their motives are. And I know that you know that it doesn't really explain all the loose ends and tie them all up. I think that you know, after kicking down so many doors in New World Order research and seeing those that truly expose the New World Order, this theme, that it is in fact theistic Satanism behind those doors. I know that you've seen that. You've seen that they are high-level occultists that really run this show and that are in the shadows. And that even those front men at the very tops are only front men, and that the real movers and shakers are those that hold very dedicated beliefs about the worship of Satan. So we even have this idea that somehow doesn't apply. We have a phrase that we'll say, which is, it doesn't matter what you believe, the fact is that they believe it, which sort of means, yeah, sure, they're all occultists at the top, but it doesn't really matter. They're just sort of deluded. And I think that's a very dangerous position, because if you actually are saying there that it doesn't matter, it's not actually true, there isn't really a Satan and there isn't really a power that they're serving, then we should just, again, think that this scenario has something to do with whatever we make it out to be. It certainly can't be about a cosmic war of good and evil, because we've already decided that that can't be true. Yet at the same time, we're pointing out that these people are knowingly worshiping Satan, which is something that the Bible has said has gone on from the very beginning. The kings and queens of all the old systems were always sacrificing their children to various gods and Moloch and these types of things. And they are still doing it today and are gaining power from it. The problem with believing that is it makes too much sense that all of this energy with the New Age preachers and teachers and truth movement icons and gurus are doing mainly two things. One, they're promoting this idea of a New Age coming in which you're going to be God and you're going to be evolved and all the obvious stuff that's preparing you for the system of the Antichrist. And the other part of that is they're telling you that Jesus isn't good, you shouldn't pay attention to him, or at least they're trying to misdirect you, tell him he's just this other guy, he's not really who the Bible says he is, or they're trying to discredit the Bible. There's only two things that these guys are doing. They're telling you and preparing you for the new system that you're going to think is your utopia, and then they're telling you to not pay any attention to the man that the Bible said would crush the one that these people at the top are worshiping. Does anybody see a problem with that? That we have been told what to think about the Bible and Jesus Christ by Satanists. The problem here is that what we've been told and what we've been prepared to believe is all what we would choose to believe. It's all very seductive. They're telling you that you can be as God. They're telling you that there is no real accountability for your actions, that anything that you want to do is good and normal and should be praised. These ideas are very difficult to resist. Truth really is irrelevant at that point, because we will fight to defend those ideas, regardless of if they are true or not. And that's why there's so many conflicting quote-unquote truths in the New Age and in the truth movement. You know, that's why the first thing that you're taught in the truth movement is that truth is relative. Oh, it doesn't matter, your truth is just as good as my truth. And we'll fight to defend this completely erroneous idea. I've got news for you. It doesn't matter what way the universe operates. The fact is that it does operate one particular way, cause and effect, in a closed system. We are dealing with absolute truth. Maybe yours, maybe mine, but it is absolute, and it is one. We should be concerned about looking for the truth. And I suggest to all you researchers out there that you already have enough evidence to know that Jesus Christ is who he says that he is. You owe it to yourself to figure out more about him the way the Bible says that he is. Not the way that the New World Order says that he is, but the way the Bible says that he is. The Bible has been continually discredited. You're told not to listen to it. You're told not to pay attention to it. They do everything under the sun to keep you from it. They always have. So why don't you just realize that and take the time and figure out who is Jesus according to the Bible?